Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us here today at the Hanover YWCA to talk about the Lethality Assessment Program and my House Bill 175. I am State Representative Kate Klunk. And today you will hear about House Bill 175, and you'll also hear from folks who work every day to help domestic violence victims. You're also going to hear from some family members and some folks from the law enforcement community who implement this on the front lines every day. I would personally like to thank the Hanover YWCA for hosting this press conference this morning and for the following individuals who are here with us today. I would like to thank Representative Kristen Phillips-Hill for joining us. She is a co-sponsor of this bill, as is Representative Don Kiefer is joining us today. Representative Stan Saylor's office has Kevin Eck here this morning. Senator Alloway's office is represented by Barb Metzler. We also have from Representative Kiefer's office, Catherine Gent. From Representative Harold Hill Evans' office, Bronley Martin. From Hanover YWCA, the Executive Director, Jody Schaefer. Michelle, she's our Executive Director of Safe Home YWCA here in Hanover. Also have Chief Jeffrey Bean. He's our Police Chief with Southwestern Regional. Chad Martin, who is our Police Chief here in Hanover Borough. Chief Jim Laughlin, he's our Police Chief here in Penn Township. Also have Chief Tim Hippensteel. He is our Police Chief here in West Manheim Township. Tim, thanks for joining us today. I see Representative Grove joined us, who's also a co-sponsor of the bill. Also want to thank Lieutenant Hedinger from Penn Township Police for joining us, Dave Sunday, who is the Chief Deputy District Attorney with York County, and some family members who are here joining us today, Alicia Armold, the daughter of Barbara Schrum, who are behind me right here, and Karen Nordsick, Lori Kukendall's sister. Finally, I would like to thank our domestic violence victim, who is here and will speak later, and that is Juliet Sherrill. So thank you all for joining us here today. In May 2015, Lori Kukendall and her friend Barbara Schrum were murdered by Lori's estranged husband in a domestic violence incident when the women attempted to retrieve belongings from Lori's home. Lori and Barbara account for 2 of the 24 victims of domestic murder-suicides in Pennsylvania in 2015. Now, between 2010 and 2015, there were 110 murder-suicide incidents in the Commonwealth, and 11 of those were here in York County. One death as a result of domestic violence is too many. And that is why we must equip our police officers with the tools and training to implement the Lethality Assessment Program statewide here in Pennsylvania. The Lethality Assessment Program is an extremely effective method for law enforcement officers to identify victims of domestic violence, and specifically those who are at the highest risk of being seriously injured or killed by their intimate partner. Since Maryland has successfully implemented its Lethality Assessment Program, there has been a 25% drop. Let me repeat that, a 25% drop in the number of domestic violence-related homicides over the past 6 years. That, to me, is pretty common sense, that this program needs to be implemented across Pennsylvania. The Lethality Assessment Program assesses the increased risk of homicide through a series of 11 pretty simple questions that an officer will ask the victims at the scene. If there is an elevated risk, the officer states that he or she is going to place a call to a domestic violence shelter in a hotline where that individual can seek assistance. Now, the police officer does not require the individual seek assistance, only merely encourages them to do so. One other aspect of this bill is to ensure that our police have the proper tools and training to aid victims of domestic violence. Now, I understand that this preparation does come with a cost. So to help community police services receive the financial assistance necessary for the training and equipment to implement this program, they will need some cell phones in order to assist those high danger victims. So this particular piece of legislation will implement and create the police department grant program. And this program would allow police departments to apply for grant funding to cover costs associated with domestic violence training and other equipment like cell phones that are used to respond to those domestic violence situations. Helping our victims receive the care that they need is the main point of this bill. Now, since Laurie and Barbara's tragic death, and they were needless deaths, their families have been very strong local advocates for victims, especially for the implementation of this lethality assessment program without Pennsylvania. And without Karen and without Alicia, this bill would not have been possible. I do have to thank Representative Grove for facilitating that first meeting back in 2015 that really started this whole process. And as such, House Bill 175 will be known as Laurie and Barbara's Law in honor of Laurie Kuykendall and Barbara Schrum. Thank you again for being here today. And now I'm going to kick it over to Hanover YWCA's Executive Director, Jody Schaefer.
Thank you, Representative Klunk. We want to thank you for putting this legislation forward because it is so very much needed. The police department's Safe Home of YWCA, which is here for victims of domestic violence, and the families who stand behind us to advocate for this. It's a partnership, and it's time that we start to be proactive instead of reactive, and that's what this legislation, House Bill 175, will do. So we want to continue to work with police departments, of which they have been phenomenally supportive in the Hanover area, Representative Klunk, and all representation, as well as the families and certainly our client advocates who daily continue to deal with domestic violence. We have an important annual event coming up this Friday called Walk a Mile in Her Shoes, which is an awareness-raising event for domestic violence, where we ask men to come out and walk a mile in high heels to support and raise awareness for this. And it sounds like a fun event, and it can be a fun event, but it's a very serious issue. And so we will be out here on Friday doing that at the Weinbrenner Field just down the road from the YWCA Hanover, and welcome anyone who wants to participate in that to please come out, because we want to show our community that everyone in this room, that everyone in our community is supporting the end of domestic violence, and no more shall it be tolerated. With that, I would like to introduce Chief Greg Bean to speak about the Lethality Assessment Program and its effectiveness.
Thank you. Good morning. It's good to be here. Thanks, Kate, for having the officers in the room. It is a very important event, so we appreciate some time. I'll be brief, but I did want to make a few comments. Every now and then in policing, a new method of doing business comes along that revolutionizes how we serve our communities. The lethality assessment for domestic abuse cases is one of those few and rare tools for law enforcement that allows us to do our jobs better and smarter and offers some dramatic and positive results. Cutting domestic-related homicide, as Kate mentioned, by 25% in the state of Maryland makes any police officer stand up and take notice. If a method showed us just a 1% decline in deaths, we would immediately sign up for that. So 25% is just simply a godsend. So what does this program offer, and why does it work? Well, for anyone suffering from the evil confines of an abusive relationship, it allows expert help whenever they need it. I not only look at this problem from the perspective of the victim, obviously, but as a police manager. How does this program help the cop get better at their jobs at the scene of the ever so frequent domestic abuse call? After all, I believe that we already are doing a good job. We're very sympathetic to the plight of the victim. We're good listeners. We offer solid legal and practical advice to the victim, and we'll certainly arrest any violator when the evidence suggests that we should. But many of the problems that the officer is trying to fix with the victim are problems that we simply cannot see. We can't see the years of mental and physical abuse that the victim has endured. We can't see the fear that they endure 24 hours a day and the desperation they feel in an abusive relationship. We can't see those types of scars because they are not as obvious to the officer. To determine those issues, we need to rely on a tool such as the Lethality Assessment. As noted already, 11 tried and true questions of the victim, which determine really how bad their situation is. It takes the guesswork out of the interview and allows every victim who needs the extra help, the help that they deserve. From the expertise of a trained counselor who the officer immediately connects to the victim on the phone while they are still hurting. Immediate help, something that we could never offer in the past. So police officers are really good at a lot of things, but we simply are not trained experts in this field, and we simply can't see the hidden trauma. If we can't see it, we can't fix it. But the counselor can, and can better expose the problem. I assure you that officers very much welcome a program and a system that introduces an expert to the victim. In many of these cases, assuring the officer that he or she, the officer, never has to come back to that home again because the problem has been successfully solved. So, and therefore, I'm here to support Representative Kate Klunk's Bill 175 regarding the need for every police officer in Pennsylvania to be trained in the Lethality Assessment Program so we can better help our communities get beyond the dreaded curse of domestic abuse. It will allow officers to finally be able to see what's happening in an abuse victim's life and quite possibly uncover the hidden trauma so they can heal as they should. I appreciate you listening to our information today.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief Bean, for sharing that information about how you're using that every day in Southwestern Regional. And I know all of our police departments who are here are using it and see the value in it every day. Now, I would like to introduce Alicia Armold, daughter of Barbara Schrum. She and Karen were the two advocates who came to Representative Grove and I back in 2015 and turned a very, very tragic situation into a positive one. And they're proof positive that if you contact your legislators and bring to them evidence of a program that works, there are listening ears, and that is why we have House Bill 175. With that, Alicia.
Good morning. Thank you for everyone for being here today. After my mom died, I realized that I had two choices. I could try and do something, or I could just cry the rest of my life. So it's something I still work on every day, but I chose to do something. I live in Maryland now, where this lethality assessment program started. And I've talked to so many people, advocates, police officers, who just speak nothing but good things about it and how much it has helped in the state of Maryland. And I'm so grateful to Kate Klunk and Representative Grove for advocating for this. And, you know, I never thought 2 years ago that I'd be standing here talking about it, and it's becoming real. So I appreciate all the support and call your representatives. And, you know, another thing that I wanted to say is I didn't realize how prevalent domestic violence is until it affected my life. And I had so many people reach out to me and say, I have a sister, I have a friend, I have, you know, I knew this person. So it happens much more frequently than we realize. And so that's why I think we need every tool available to police officers and the community and to victims so that my pain and Karen's pain doesn't happen to more people. So thank you for your support. I greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
So, and now, Karen Nordsick, sister of Lori Kukendaw.
Good morning. So as you all know, back in 2015, my sister and Barbara were brutally murdered by my sister's estranged husband. Now that Laurie and Barb are angels in heaven, I'm here today to advocate for my daughters, my granddaughter, your sisters, your daughters, And I want to let you all know that the lethality assessment program does in fact work. It has saved many lives, and if you log on to the Pennsylvania Coalition website, it's all right there. So I want to thank you all for coming out today, and thank Kate for what she's doing to pass this House Bill 175. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we have a domestic violence victim who would like to share her very powerful story, Juliet Sharrow.
Hello, my name is Juliet Sharrow, and I am a survivor of domestic violence. I cannot adequately express how important the lethality assessment screening is. This assessment can truly mean the difference between life and death for some victims. As a victim, I can tell you it is a terrifying thing to be beaten every day and fear for your life. And when the police intervene, it only makes the abuser more angry. It can be an extremely dangerous time for a victim. You are torn between wanting help and fear of your abuser. All you can think about is, how am I going to make it through the night after the police leave? Even if the abuser is taken into custody, they will be out in no time and be furious, because in their mind, it's your fault they were arrested. You are scared to death and afraid that anything and everything will only make the abuser more violent. In the heat of the moment, the victim feels they have no choice. The abuser has so terrorized them that they are left feeling no one can help them and no one cares if they live or die. Without this assessment, victims are merely given the number of a local hotline and encouraged to get help. But when you're not even sure if you will live through the next day, you can't even begin to think about reaching out for help on your own. This can be very scary for victims because most believe that the system cannot really help them or protect them. Like in my case, my abuser told me that if he wanted to kill me, he would. It didn't matter if the police were there or not. And I believed him. I was too scared of his retaliation to press charges and too terrified to reach out for help on my own. With this program in place, a victim who is identified as high risk is connected immediately with crisis center support. These are people who help victims on a daily basis, who know how to talk to them and ease their fears and answer their questions. Many of these workers have been victims themselves. This helps the victim to know they are not alone and that someone really does understand what they're going through. And it makes taking the step of getting help not seem so scary or lonely. Please understand this can be very empowering for a victim and can help them to take positive action towards protecting themselves and their children. Having this in place helps the victim take the first step towards safety before the abuser can convince them otherwise. When a victim has made this connection with the crisis center and feels safe with them in the midst of the domestic violence incident, they are much more likely to seek their continued help. From a victim's point of view, I believe this bill is crucial in enabling victims to get help and stay safe. It gives them a chance to recognize how dangerous their situation is, and enables them to see that the police and the crisis center truly do care and want to help protect them. I believe this is a huge step in the right direction toward helping victims break the cycle of violence. And I believe, most importantly, that it will save lives. Thank you, Kate, for not giving up on this very important bill and for not giving up on us, the victims.
Thank you, Juliet, for those powerful words. Wow. Now, I know you said don't give up on us, and we won't. My colleagues here behind us, we stand firm behind House Bill 175. In the fall, we will be returning to Harrisburg, and we will be pushing this bill. The House comes back into session in September, if not before then. And I look forward to working with my chairman, Chairman Marsico, in the Judiciary Committee where this bill sits, and trying to get this bill out of committee, then out of the House, over to the Senate, and then hopefully in the governor's hands. I just want to thank all of you for joining us today in support of House Bill 175. This is truly a life-saving tool to protect our victims of domestic violence and our police officers. And again, I look forward to working with my House colleagues in getting this past the finish line. I would also like to encourage everyone and give one final last plug to the Hanover YWCA Safe Home and their Walk a Mile event on Friday. I will be there with some of my staff, and I believe my staffer Carrie's son will be there walking a mile in her shoes. He's very, very excited about it. So gentlemen, sign up, get your pink pumps ready to go, and get out there and support our domestic violence victims. Registration is still open. So thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate it and look forward to working with you all and getting this across the finish line. So thank you. Any questions? Any quick questions?
Knock it out of committee last.
Well, there are a number of bills that go through the House, and not every bill goes through committee. So
Was there a particular objection to this one, or it was
just the process, and you know, we had introduced it towards the end of session, if you will. So sometimes you have to go through and sit down, and it takes a while to get even just an idea into written bill form. And that's where I have to thank a lot of the people up here who were very, very integral in that, in making sure that, you know, all the I's were dotted and T's are crossed, and, you know, a bill's still a work in progress. So
There's
if
a lot of support from your colleagues, bipartisan?
Yes, the bill is very bipartisan. We have a number of Democrats on the bill, Republicans on the bill, and one gentleman, Representative Dom Costa, he actually is the former police chief in Pittsburgh and sees the value as a former member of law enforcement in the bill. So it has supportive law enforcement in the House, and Democrats and Republicans alike. Just common sense people who see this as a tool to save lives. Any other questions? Thank you. Thank you all for joining us today.